So, first off is the Amazon cuts. I know this has kind of been a big topic for a lot of people, and this gentleman kind of gives some insight on why these cuts are occurring.
Amazon laid off 30,000 people today. The narrative is that this is about AI replacing jobs. The reality is very different, and I want to be really precise about it because it gets at corporate structure and finance and not really at AI and the way you think. So when people think AI layoffs, they think the robots are doing
Correct.
the jobs now, and therefore we are having layoffs. No. The people who are doing the jobs are more stressed if they're still at Amazon, but the AI automation story isn't actually hitting those jobs. What is hitting those jobs and is related to AI is the cost of chips. So NVIDIA sells chips to everyone, GPUs. Those chips are how we power AI, and none of the major cloud providers can get enough chips right now. Microsoft can't, Google can't. Google's in an easier spot, they have TPUs, and Amazon definitely can't. In fact, people don't know this, but AWS has a roughly 25% burning backlog on GPUs. In other words, they are missing out on revenue because companies are begging for more compute from AWS that they can't fulfill because they can't buy GPUs because they only had so much budgeted to buy GPUs. And so, yes, the layoffs are related to AI, but in this case, it is burning corporate demand for GPU chips that is hitting the capital expenditure budget of Amazon so hard that they need to find other ways to reduce fixed costs so they can meet the expectations of Wall Street around the overall margins of the business. And you might be like, well, why does that matter? They're all...
So, stop right there. But
Yeah.
so go ahead, Keegan.
Well, it's interesting. We just had the AWS issue, I think, nationally, globally, last week, and it all kind of goes back to computing power, right? In my opinion, you have all these massive data centers, and some of the jobs that are going to be taken are strictly in that finance, accounting type roles where you still aren't seeing the job losses, I don't think, in the controls engineering space, the robotics space, right? Those roles, I think, are still hiring a lot.
Right. So, I see he's talking about chips. So my thing is the whole harvesting of chips, is that backlog because of the material they can't find, or is it just a money factor? Because
I personally think it's like what you were saying. It's not really. How should I put this? Amazon had a plan. Like everyone has a 5, 10-year, 15,
Sure. Yeah,
20-year plan. So they had a plan to upgrade their AWS system, but they're like, we're getting such a demand now. Things are moving so fast now that we need to figure out how to adjust our operations cost in order to purchase the hardware in order
the amount
for us
that
to
they're
keep
gonna
up.
need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're like, how are we going to do this? And there was other things he alluded to was other factions of Amazon, their profit margins are very thin. And in the AWS space, it's a pretty good margin rate. I think it was like 25%. I think everything else is like between 10% or less.
Wow.
I'm just paraphrasing because it was like within that range. But the point that he was alluding to is that they had to figure out how to get operational cost or somehow make cuts to be able to purchase that and to be able to push that forward.
So take it to the basics, right? So this reminds me of, when you drive around, you see all these storage units,
Yep.
and you say, who builds those and who rents those and who puts the stuff in them, right?
Yep.
But the model on those storage units is pretty much similar. What is with these data centers and with these chips, the initial investment, they get paid off in about a couple of years.
Yeah.
So it's the same model. So, they have to have that cash or that financially strong, and backing to build these data centers and have the chips and so on. But my thing is still, financially, yes, that may be a factor. I think it's more towards the harvesting, the getting the chips, because again, right now the new thing is like you see, there's about 2 or 3 places in Michigan. They're locals are fighting against the data centers because of, because they don't want the noise, they don't want the water used, whatever their local reason may be. But on other hand, they are coming to these places like Michigan and things like that. But so they're building it. So they're proposed for next 5 years. I don't know how many.
So do you guys look at this as being Amazon trying to get ahead of the curve? Like, for example, somebody's going to do this. Somebody's going to upgrade their equipment enough to be able to handle
and you got to remember too, just because they're laying off 30,000 now in a certain area, right? They're probably going to add another 100,000 later.
They did,
right? Or in different spots. So these are also things that people,
Yeah.
that catches the news. Hiring 100,000 people for a data center or manufacturing facilities doesn't.
And I think that GM and Ford and all them, they let go 16,000 on one side, but they hired in other places because the industry is not technically ready for EV. But
and then actually I kind of looked at those numbers, and a lot of the areas that they were laying off people was like in the battery sector because we're not pushing for that anymore. So they let go a lot of people in those programs, but they're moving in different areas, which makes sense. The one thing I hope a lot of companies are not doing, and I'm going to give an example. So back in, I believe it's in the 70s when robots were coming into play, and there was like a lot of different type of robot companies. So I'm not going to get into the name of the company, but
if you pay us, we'll bring you.
So one of the companies, they decided to try to make a whole automation line full of robots instead of people, which at the time they thought the technology could be able to handle that. But they ended up just actually losing money because they put all this money into the robots, but they weren't designed to be able to handle that. I feel like we're hitting that same situation with AI. A lot of companies have put too much trust into it to be able to handle it. Whatever.
Some companies are pulling back on some of their AI initiatives, and even I think some of the bigger companies we're talking within the last week or two, we're not paying hundreds of millions of dollars anymore for these AI engineers.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to be a little bit more strategic about this, and maybe we actually do need some people around a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They need to be strategic about it. They can't just dive into it and then expect it to work the way they think it should, because we went through this hand in hand on different podcasts with us, as in the AI is nice. The AI, can do the job, but you need somebody there to watch it. Otherwise, because you gotta remember, it doesn't have a conscience. It just does what it does.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just again, it is like robots. People call it robots are smart. Actually, robots to me are pretty dumb. Especially these industrial robots.
Yeah.
They do what we tell them. So it's kind of like a similar way these AIs is, yes, they're going to, there's a super AI, this and that, but I think that's more on the talk for now. I mean, they are developing it, but we're not there yet.
Right.
But the infrastructure, again, those we just talked about chips and so on, this gentleman did, but the energy part too, right?
Yeah.
Are we ready? I mean, we're not even ready for EV industry. You would think we were ready for
no
AI.
way. Not even close.
Yeah, we don't have
we don't have the infrastructure.
Infrastructure for the amount of energy.
We're shutting down. Yeah.
What were you going to say? Sorry.
So we're shutting down all these energy plants because we want to be, environment friendly, which is great. But on the other hand, we don't have the infrastructure ready to replace those.
Well, and here's the kind of the other sad part is that, electric bills are going up because of demand.
We're paying for that AI.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's something that, there's a lot of different, honestly, the AI has created a lot of different good and a lot of different stuff that we need to think about as in where do we need to invest in other areas like the grid, like,
and it's almost like person who's not using AI, they're paying for it through energy. So that's the biggest thing. So, it need to be allocated to people who are, charge whatever fee you're doing, but it shouldn't be just people like Amish people paying for it because they're not using AI.